Imagine needing a wheelbarrow full of banknotes just to buy a loaf of bread. This wasn't a dystopian novel, it was Zimbabwe, 2008, a country drowning in zeros. This is the story of how one of Africa's most promising economies printed itself into oblivion, the rise and catastrophic fall of the Zimbabwean dollar. In 1980, Zimbabwe gained independence from Britain. Robert Mugabe, a former guerrilla leader turned president, took power with promises of prosperity, reconciliation, and equality. At first, things looked hopeful. Zimbabwe inherited a strong agricultural base, a robust infrastructure, and one of the most educated populations on the continent. The country was even referred to as the breadbasket of Africa. The early years of independence saw positive signs, a strong push for education, investment in health services, and infrastructure development. However, behind the scenes, issues began to take shape. Mugabe's government increasingly relied on patronage systems and unsustainable fiscal practices. State-owned enterprises expanded inefficiently, draining public resources. Meanwhile, the government borrowed heavily from foreign lenders, accumulating unsustainable debt. Corruption became entrenched and institutions grew weaker. Political repression escalated. Opposition parties and independent media faced harassment and suppression. These factors, combined with a failure to diversify the economy, planted the seeds of a future crisis. In the late 1990s, the economy began to decline. Inflation picked up, and unemployment crept higher. Facing rising discontent, Mugabe made a drastic political decision: the Land Reform Program. Launched in 2000, it promised to redistribute land from the white minority to black Zimbabweans. In practice, it was chaotic and violent. Thousands of white-owned commercial farms were seized, often with no compensation. These farms had been the backbone of Zimbabwe's agricultural exports and food production. Many were handed over to political allies of the ruling party, with no experience or capacity to maintain productivity. The consequences were devastating. Agricultural output plummeted by over 60%. Maize, wheat, and tobacco production collapsed. The country, once an exporter of food, became dependent on international aid. Food shortages emerged across cities and villages. Supermarkets ran empty. Rural communities went hungry. The impact rippled through the economy. Manufacturing sectors that relied on agriculture suffered. Unemployment soared past 50%. Export earnings vanished, shrinking foreign currency reserves. Confidence evaporated, and international donors withdrew support. Instead of addressing the crisis, the government increased spending on the military and security forces. To finance this, they turned to the central bank. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe began printing money at an unprecedented scale. Public sector wages, subsidies, and military budgets were covered not by revenue but by newly printed dollars. At first, this created a short-term illusion of liquidity, but soon, inflation spiraled. Prices doubled every few months, then every few weeks. Shops could no longer tag items; it wasn't worth the effort. By 2006, the annual inflation rate passed 1,000%. Citizens began to spend their money as fast as possible, knowing it would be worth less the next day. The value of the currency disintegrated in real time. Savings evaporated, businesses failed, barter systems reappeared in both rural and urban areas. The government attempted to control inflation through price controls. It mandated maximum retail prices below production costs. This backfired. Goods vanished from official stores. A thriving black market developed, where items could be found at exorbitant prices. By 2007, inflation had reached 66,000%. The central bank responded by issuing new notes almost weekly: 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. Each denomination lost value before the ink dried. People needed sacks of cash to buy groceries. By mid-2008, Zimbabwe's inflation was the highest in the world, over 231 million% by some estimates. Others put it in the quadrillions. In just 1 month, prices could increase more than in entire decades elsewhere. The effects of hyperinflation were catastrophic. Public services collapsed. Hospitals closed or operated without medicine. School teachers and civil servants could no longer afford transport to work. Municipal water and electricity systems failed. People turned to survival strategies. Many relied on relatives abroad sending remittances in dollars. Others left the country entirely. An estimated 3 to 5 million Zimbabweans fled to South Africa, Botswana, the UK, and beyond. Cash lost all function. Workers were sometimes paid in goods instead of currency. Small businesses shuttered. Supermarket shelves remained empty. Petrol was unavailable for weeks at a time. State pensions became worthless. Elderly citizens who had saved all their lives found themselves destitute. With faith and money gone, trust in government disintegrated. Political protests surged, met with harsh crackdowns. Journalists and activists were arrested. The ZANU-PF government blamed external actors, Western sanctions, foreign conspiracies, but the reality was clear to most Zimbabweans. In a last-ditch effort to restore order, the government redenominated the currency multiple times. In 2006, 3 zeros were removed. In 2008, 10 more. In 2009, 12. But the problem wasn't the number of zeros, it was the lack of credibility. The 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note, issued in early 2009, became a global symbol of economic absurdity. It couldn't even buy a loaf of bread. Government officials claimed these were temporary measures. They blamed everyone but themselves. Meanwhile, locals turned to foreign currencies, mostly the US dollar, for everyday transactions. Many shops stopped accepting Zimbabwean currency altogether. Banking became impossible. ATMs were shut down. Electronic payments were unstable. Those who had bank accounts found their balances reduced to nothing through hyperinflation. People were effectively locked out of the economy. Even basic communication broke down. Newspapers shut down, radio stations were censored. People learned to whisper, not speak openly. Meanwhile, the black market boomed in fuel, foreign currency, food, and even passports. In early 2009, the Zimbabwean dollar was officially abandoned. The country dollarized. The US dollar, South African rand, and Botswana pula were legalized for everyday use. Prices stabilized almost overnight. Shops restocked, salaries regained purchasing power. People could save again, in dollars. For the first time in nearly a decade, Zimbabweans experienced economic normalcy. Between 2009 and 2013, GDP recovered modestly. The informal economy flourished under new stability. Remittances grew, but dollarization came with limitations. The government lost the ability to control monetary policy. Credit remained tight. Unemployment stayed high. By 2016, the state attempted to reintroduce a local currency via bond notes, claiming parity with the US dollar. But trust had not returned. People immediately treated bond notes as inferior. In 2019, inflation began rising again. By 2020, a new Zimbabwean dollar was launched, yet many refused to use it. Dual pricing systems, US dollar versus local dollar, became common. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to restore. Today, Zimbabwe's economy remains fragile. Inflation continues to threaten stability. Foreign currency use is widespread. Confidence in the financial system is low. International investors remain wary. Local businesses operate in uncertainty. But beyond the numbers lies a deeper truth. Zimbabwe's experience is a warning, not only to Africa, but to the world. It reveals what happens when governments abandon economic fundamentals, erode public institutions, and use money as a political tool. Hyperinflation isn't merely about printing money, it's about collapsing trust. And when that happens, no denomination, not even 100 trillion, can restore what's lost. Money is a shared belief, a contract, a symbol of collective faith. When that symbol is broken, societies unravel. This was Zimbabwe, and this is what happens when money goes mad.